Welcome, everyone, to episode 414 of Just Joshing. I'm your host, Joshua Pantelleresco. I write stuff in our podcast, too, and we are now 5 weeks away from the finish of the Cloud Diver as story time resumes with the final stage. We are finally here at the final stage, and I am excited to do this. I'm really cool. It's been an amazing 5 weeks. It's been a wild ride, man, this whole freelancing thing. Ups and downs all around, and just constant challenges to get better. I think every writer should do this once. Whether or not it works out or not, every writer should do this once. It's hard, but you learn so much about yourself doing it. And I've been doing a bunch. I'm really excited about everything going on right now, but let's just get to it. I start with the final chapter. Johnny goes in with Gunblade finally back into the cloud. And this is how it begins.
This episode of Just Joshing is sponsored by Indie Imprint. Indie Imprint supports creators by creators. Whether you are writing a book or creating a video game, Indie Imprint works with its clients to produce, edit, and present their projects to the world. For more information, check out their website at www.indieimprint.com.
The Cloud Diver, Final Stage, Chapter 1, Feed Void Life. Void Life verified. Criminal mastermind Johnny Wheeler is wanted for the variety of crimes, including the following. Before returning to the cloud, I was processed by the local police. I was fingerprinted, phone calls were made, and I met a civil servant named Dan, who was my assigned legal counsel. When he told me that the Magna Carta was based on a video game series, I prayed that this road would not be taken should this whole plan fail. I didn't want to spend the rest of my days in jail. We had a plan. That reassured me more than I'd ever admit to anyone. I like plans. Plans indicate thought, vision, and direction. Adventure may drive its own merry way, but I liked the prospect of steering adventure my way for once. For this to work, we'd have to travel once again into the Dark Tower. Since I was now persona non grata at Void Life, I expected there would be resistance going into the makeshift 13th floor. Assuming there wasn't any trouble, we would then attempt to navigate the cloud to find Stevie Y. I missed having him in my head. Stevie Y would have had a half dozen witty remarks about this crazy mission. He dealt me with the new feelings and life outlook. What was I going to do with myself when this was over? Gunblade appeared as the chairs were put together. She marveled at the officer's efficiency as they assembled the Sawyer resonator, adding the hard drive, tower, and already turning on the operating system. I had to admit that I was impressed too. Officers were not that efficient in Void Life. They never answered phone calls right away when a problem occurred, and they couldn't do some of the basic functions that a lot of us normal folk took for granted. It had seemed at times that being the bottom of the food chain was a job requirement for Void Life security. Watching this officer do his job with such skill, I questioned for the first time that maybe I had been on purpose. Why would Void Life hire incompetent people to do their job? Worse yet, if they were hiring competent people to handle security, what other departments had issues? After a very obvious nod of approval and thanks to the officer, Gunblade focused her attention to me. This won't be like last time, she wrote. The cloud evolves. It can't evolve that much, I answered. More than you might think. Gunblade glanced at Hannah, who had joined us in our escort. A cell waited us at the end of this. Officers joined Hannah in front and behind as we moved to our destination. For all intents and purposes, it wasn't that different than my office of Void Life. I mean, sure, the bars and the curiosity of the other summons around us made it feel a little more like a weird theater show than a day at the office. But there were 2 chairs with VR sets and Sawyer resonators with machines monitoring vital signs. Gunblade stepped in the cell first. Her simultaneous glares at the 2 assembled chairs and resonators made her go a little cross-eyed. Hannah did a silent cross motion and shook her head before looking at us. With great reluctance, she passed us both a capsule. I held mine in a hand, noticing it was red and waxy, wondering what I was supposed to do with it. With the capsule going through your system, we can monitor your hand, explained to me while I looked at it. Once it goes through your digestive tract, you'll disappear. How long is that? Feels like this breakdown in a few hours. It takes about 20 minutes for it to create the programmed brainwaves in our system. After that, 5 or 6 hours maybe? Hannah gave a question look towards one of the subordinates who helped assemble the resonators. They nodded. 5 or 6 hours. Try not to get yourself killed. Thanks, I glowered. Almost ready, the officer said, connecting the found parts of the assembled resonator. The officer turned to Hannah and saluted her before going back to work, doing the last diagnostics and tests for the power system. Watching Gunblade talk to Henblade and the officers, I could see how relaxed they were. Damn it. It was clear this wasn't the first time the police had worked with her on something like this. It made me wonder who Gunblade really was. I swallowed the capsule and gulped down the water offered by Hannah's. A subordinate, and I felt the hard connection of the Sawyer resonator to that bias in my skull. I cringed for a second. Nah, man. It had been a long time since I was hardwired into one of them. Sawyer resonators served two important functions. The first was that it was a launching point for a diver to project themselves into the web. It was also a compass point to return to. The second function was that Sawyer resonators monitored your conscious mind as you navigated the systems of your brain. It recorded your brainwaves and, as a last resort, could be used to restore your consciousness to a pre-dive state. That came with its own consequences, however. Most resonators deployed like use no router, but rather a wireless signal. I adjusted to the cord in the back of myself and closed my eyes. I dived. My feet touched down on a familiar surface. Black and white tile floor stared back at me, framing my own reflection. Gunblade stretched as if walking from a dream. I looked back and saw all too familiar elevator. We had returned. The Cloud Diver, Final Stage, Chapter 2. Feed. Void Life. At Void Life. Void Life era. Espionage, destruction of private property, assault on Void Life officials. He's considered dangerous and unstable. If you have information on this man, contact us here. My face stared at me from above the elevator. The Void Life read scrolled across the screen proclaiming my criminal activities. A new application. It made the lobby seem more corporate somehow. I imagined trading deals and important company happenings being reported in this feed while people waited. You're famous, Gunblade observed. She's loading the bullets into her gunblade. As each bullet was found and placed in the chamber, I watched her shoulders round, stretching her magic much like she did in our sparring session. Doesn't the polar put bullets in the gun? There's something reassuring about doing things like this yourself. This, she paused as she finished loading bullets into the chambers and locked them in with safety. A loud click of the gun confirmed that everything was exactly where it was supposed to be. It's my moment of prayer. Do you believe in God? Gunblade paused so long I thought she was going to be one of those awkward silences. She surprised me with a tiny yes. A picture of Void Life's glorious founder Bender floated above the screen. He looked serene and nearly divine as he scowled down on us in judgment. Gunblade's face darkened upon him. We need to move, she said. Don't touch anything. I worked here. I know it's safe. Do you? Gunblade cocked an eyebrow at me. They're looking for you, but I'm a ghost. Let me haunt the place and make them wonder what's going on. If you announce your presence here in any way, we'll have attention. She grimaced at her gun before finishing her statement, and I'd rather not waste my bullets. Gunblade had a point. There was a more selfish reason for her to do what she told me. I was jealous in a way one professional can be of another. Somehow, someway, she had found a back door in the tower to break into the cloud. As a diver, and in part, a hacker, I had to admire her success. I had to know how she did it. We entered the elevator and pushed the button for floor 156, the current top floor of the tower. While the elevator started to accelerate, Gunblade assumed a sword stance with her blade. She made a circular motion in front of it with her hands. Numbers in the nose shot out from her fingers, and the gun blade started to glow shape. Lines of gold and silver surrounded the weapon and morphed to what looked like a key. A keyblade, I asked, once she was famous. This whole place is a metaphor. Logos, messages, and words of power here as much as they have in the real world. Perhaps more. This really isn't a key, or a sword, or even a gunblade. This is my great communicator. She plunged the sword into the elevator switch. The silver and gold from the blade infected the panel, flowing into the elevator like a virus. She concentrated on the door. Grimacing, a sweat appeared on her face. A button number 13 appeared between 12 and 14. Curious about how she did that ward with dread of what awaited us on the other side. I remember like before all this started. I would come home, tired, see my company provide furniture, and just decompress for an hour. Then I would play video games, New White Sand City in all likelihood. Everything provided for me, everything ever except... What would have happened if I hadn't pushed the button? I'd still be in the room Stevie was my only source of company. The only thing that makes me seem well, all the while regret eating at me. Because even with the dream job secure and my life locked away all safe and sound, I had been missing something. I had told myself I'd been doing the right thing, but I'd given up my autonomy, sane human contact. Lisa. How long would I live if I would have just done my job that day? As the door opened to the 13th floor, I realized that I may have gone crazy. Hell, I probably was crazy. The same empty space stared at us with the cloud in the distance. The image was not as misty this time. The inverted tower had taken a more solidified shape. The blue lightning came more regularly as the tendrils of the mist expanded. The tower went farther down than last time, and I noticed it was still changing and evolving. I remember how incomplete the cloud felt from the outside last time, and the knowledge sunk in. The cloud was incomplete, and it, like the tower behind us, was still becoming something else. But what was the tower becoming, and what was the cloud becoming as well? Gunblade walked out of the elevator and forward completely at ease with Keyblade in hand. The sky held her aloft. She demanded it. With much tenderness, I took that first step out. My foot found a hard surface. I'd watched her do it, yet I still didn't quite understand this bridge she created. But there was solid ground beneath me as I followed her, hustling to keep pace and feared the bridge would disappear. Gunblade was once again working on an invocation to create a Keyblade to open the door. While she did, my eye caught the most wonderful thing in the world just outside of the cloud. I never thought I'd see the deployed life safety scanner again. It was floating there, waiting to be reunited with me. I wasn't going to be sucked in again without it. I clutched my dear friend in my arms and did my best to give the tablet a hug. Such a precious thing. My senses came back as Gunblade finished unlocking the cloud with her Keyblade. I looked at my long-lost friend and knew somehow deep inside that I needed to get rid of the thing. It couldn't protect me in a cloud. That said, it was a tether to a life I'd thrown away. I told myself it could be used to. Okay, maybe I still had a lot to improve on. Justification is the easiest thing in the world to do once you start. I turned on my tablet. To my surprise, it loaded up instantly. I got the red flash of doom followed by its accompanying loud noise of a siren sounding off in the middle of nowhere. What are you doing? She asked with a touch of concern in her voice. I turned on my old company state device and it was flashing red. What was the problem? This was mine when I worked at Void Life? She glanced down at my trusty companion in brown. A safety pin? Safety pin? This is some kind of wrist assassin talent. It offers no protection at all and probably wouldn't work in the cloud anyway. It could forewarned us. Even that sounded hollow to my ears. Chances are that she was right about the cloud, but I didn't want to let go quite that easy. Gunblade wasn't having any of it. Okay then, if it's so easy, scan the cloud. Gladly! I set my trusty talent scan the cloud, hoping against all odds that Gunblade was wrong. I'd hoped for a red, orange, or pure safety of the green status. An error 404 appeared on tab, but I still didn't know what a 404 was. But it confirmed that my trusty friend was no longer so trusty. I looked at the last relic of the past in my head. I just want assurances, you know? Why can't something tell me what's going to happen next? Life is full of surprises. There are never any guarantees. Gunblade kept her voice neutral, almost philosophical. Don't you think life would be better if there were no surprises? Gunblade removed the key from the cloud, its gold and silver residue still visible. A wooden door had appeared where the key had done its job, it decorated with a tree icon. It looked like an oak with branches that stretched beyond any door. It was a very cool design and added to my question about my companion. What's life without surprises? Her grin was a little awry when she said it, as if something had resonated. She said, leave it behind. I looked at my old friend, my safety pin. I really wanted it with me. It was comforting. But she was right. It wasn't going to do any good for me in the cloud. It didn't belong with me anymore. She opened the door. I dropped her tablet and followed her into the cloud.
This is Kathleen with BookBrush, and I wanted to tell you a little bit about BookBrush.com. Our team developed BookBrush for authors like you after having hundreds of conversations with authors that were struggling with creating images or simply paying too much per image to have a graphic designer do the job. So we created, for authors specifically, the easiest way to create professional ads and social media images for your books. We'd love to have you join us at bookbrush.com.
And that was part 1. So, yeah, we're counting down. There's 4 more chapters to go. 2 next week, 1 the following, and then a special epilogue for the epilogue of the story. I'm really excited about that. But let's talk about my reading guest, because my reading guest is amazing. Joe Compton is, most people know him for GoIndieNow. And what a lot of people tend to forget with people that, like Joe and like myself, like anyone that hosts a show, we're writers. And we're damn good writers. Joe is a damn good writer. And he tends to take, again, he's worked so hard to pursue his other passions. He's a man like me in the sense that he has a variety of interests. He wants to do films. That man wants to direct movies. That's what that man is. I feel it in my heart and soul. That's what he wants to do. And so, Joe, if you're listening to this, and I hope you are, I want you to understand something from me to you. I sincerely hope in the years to come, you pursue that with all the fervor and passion you have. Because honestly, you can do it. You can make movies. It's totally within you. You have a great mind for storytelling. This book, We the Moral Majority, is a great book, and I hope you guys check it out. Beyond that, guys, well, let's have Joe read now, shall we?
Hello, my friends out there in Just Joshing Land. I am Joe Compton. I'm a crime thriller author who has written 2 books, Amongst the Killing and We the Moral Majority. We the Moral Majority is technically the sequel to Amongst the Killing. However, I do believe they could easily be standalone novels and they could be read as such. I do highly recommend, however, you read both books because the characters from the second book obviously were in the first book, at least some of them. And the second book also has references to the first book. However, I don't believe you have to read both books to follow along with the story. But again, as I said, I would highly recommend it. That being said, I'm going to read from We the Moral Majority today for you. And the story is about Special Agent Janelle Pachenko, who is married to the subject of the first book, Amongst the Killing, Detective Charles Street. And she's kind of facing this kind of dichotomy right now, where she's trying to decide, can she be these 2 different people? One being a politician's wife, as her husband is running for mayor of Los Angeles in the early 80s under the banner of the Moral Majority, who are a fringe group, they're a conservative fringe group, I should say, who actually did exist, they're real, and they actually helped Ronald Reagan get elected president. And so she has to be this conservative, almost girly-like woman that she's not really in real life. In real life, she likes to be a badass FBI agent, so she struggles with these identities, and can she do both? In the same time, she is investigating the Moral Majority for some misgivings and mistidings that have gone on behind the scenes that she's privy to because she's a part of this world because of her husband's political aspirations. So it's her going through all of that. This will start from chapter 4, and I'll go from there. So let's begin. What do you want to bet he's going to run? I smiled at Arlo as we got out of the car and headed up to the waist-high chain-link fence surrounding a very unkempt front yard. No way, JD. We aren't dressed like cops. He'll at least answer the door. Is it possible to hate and envy someone's bright side of life demeanor at the same time? If so, that has to describe me and my partner's relationship over the past couple years. I looked down. The gate was half latched, as though someone slammed it and didn't bother to double back to close it all the way. Well, Arlo, one thing's for sure. My eyes caught his and then diverted down to my hand that was about to push the gate wide open. With this top-notch security system, I'm sure we're dealing with a criminal mastermind who's 3 steps ahead of us. With that, I flicked my finger onto the gate with an almost subtle tap, and the gate flew open. Arlo smiled and walked into the yard. Arlo and I weren't always partnered, especially not while in the United States Marshals, which is how we met. Now that we're both company man and woman respectively with the Federal Bureau of Investigation of Los Angeles, having that previous connection, it only made sense that we would be partnered up. Would I call it a comfort thing? I don't know. I mean, we knew each other and worked the same details, but neither of us were ever in charge of any of those assignments, or even running point when the other was on the detail. Arlo is the kind of guy that makes my husband jealous. I don't know why. I mean, Arlo is only taller by a couple inches or so, which makes him about 6'4" or 5. That deep golden brown tan and perfectly pearly whites make him even more qualified for the lead in a soap opera than on a FBI task force. But alas, there he is. If you take away the way he looks and smells, then there really isn't that much there. Yes, I said smells. Because thanks to the wonderful miracle of giving birth to my daughter, I've become more overtly aware of the way a person, especially him, smells. Let me just put it this way. Arlo and his soap or cologne is some cruel mixture of freshly baked chocolate chip cookies and lavender. I peer over his shoulder, not to get too close, just to take one deep breath in. He caught me doing that once, and while it was a bit awkward, maybe more so for him, I haven't felt the shame in that yet. Yeah, hard to see why Chuck might be jealous. I do admit these thoughts that I've been gawking at Arlo for more than a subtle moment. Actually, though, I've been really thinking about chocolate chip cookies. It wasn't going to go unnoticed, however. Why are you looking at me like that? Time for me to play it off, I shrugged. Like what? I don't know, Janelle, but it's weird. Can we go knock on this guy's door already? I'm telling you, we won't get that far. Okay, what are we betting? I had to think about it for a second. I mean, knowing I was going to win, spoiler alert, I needed to make this super juicy and to my benefit. How about this? If he takes off, you have to chase him. That's only if we don't get to the door and knock, right? Arlo left his hand out to shake, and I think I made him nervous when I hesitated before actually shaking it. Almost as soon as we turned toward the house, Hector Alonso bolted out the front door, high-jumping the porch over the stairs. Even with the slightest stumble on the landing, he recovered just enough to keep his balance and momentum and leapfrog the little chain fence along the side of the yard. This guy was like a fucking cheetah. I hadn't seen moves like that during the Olympics. I hadn't seen moves like that during the Olympics we just had in our quaint little town of Los Angeles. All I did was turn to Arlo, whose head pivoted on a swivel before moving any further, and he looked up to the sky. Fuck! With that frustration, Arlo spun around and took after Hector. And while Arlo was in great shape, he was no spring chicken at 36, and no match for this kid. Even more so with Hector's lead. Hector was all of 22, maybe about as skinny as the fence post he leapt. And of course, this was his neighborhood, so he knew all the alleyways, all the neighbors who would let him cut through their houses and yards and probably do anything inadvertently they could to slow my partner down. So he might think he had this escape in the bag. Ah, the pearls of youth. I hustled into the car, and with the tug of the gear shift I was backing up. The tires tread dug into the mark on the concrete. Dug in their mark into the concrete. And little bits of asphalt at this road still had as I peeled off. I sharply turned into the alleyway just a few feet beyond Hector's house. But I had a hunch he would change course in mid-stride, and I had to go a different direction entirely, thinking he would duck into the neighbor's yard or probably likely his girlfriend and be protected by the code of the streets. So as I reached a split in a two-way street, I had to pick one and get lucky. Lucky for me, Hector had dropped out of school before his 14th birthday, so the likelihood he took probability or even geography in school was probably null and void. Sure enough, I chose right. He darted straight in front of me about 50 yards down the parallel alleyway. I darted through the alleyway and figured out he was headed into Melina's house. Melina was that on again, off again. I don't know if girlfriend is even the right term, but certainly she took care of him type of girl. I'd interviewed her about 4 months ago, coincidentally, on a case that mirrored and related to a colder case I worked on while about 5 months pregnant that involved a nearby gang. The Horchado gang. I got an assignment thinking my belly protruding would only disarm Melina, who was a mother 2 times over herself. it worked, and what also worked to my advantage was Hector just happened to stop by and promptly get nervous when he realized who I was and took off that day too. So with a sharp left and a little cut across the gas station entrance, I was in front of her house about 25 seconds before he was. I don't know if he saw me and thought, oh shit, it's her again, or if he just arrogantly thought he could make it to Melina's door. But when he saw the door swing open, he made a mid-strike course correction by trying to do a stutter step and a little juke move that he probably used in his freshman football days. He almost made it, to which I give him credit. However, his moves needed a little work. Thank God I wore pants today. As soon as he started going to the passenger side, I jumped onto the hood and slid, better than I anticipated, and crashed right into him. I do that leap, and 8 times out of 10, I neither make it to the guy or he sprints right past me. This time it worked, and I didn't hesitate to grab a hold of something to keep him down. As he tried to squirm out, he suddenly jerked forward, and I realized in a split second I had his wrist twisted in the opposite direction to his elbow and shoved into his ass crack. If he moved, his whole arm would snap in two. I think normally he would have taken that chance, but he was winded. So I pressed my knees, one onto his lower back and the other into the back of his neck, shoving his face into the concrete. He flailed like a dying fish, but he wasn't going anywhere. Arlo ran up with his sidearm drawn and pointed at Hector's head as he caught his breath and slowly crept closer. Hector's eyes shifted to see him doing this and quit his struggling. As I cuffed him and stood him up, nonchalantly handed him over to Arlo with one hand, with the other smoothing out my pants and wiping the dust from them. Holy shit, that was like 1970s cop show like shit. I looked down at my hands. Besides being all blackened, there were a couple nice bloody scrapes on one of my palms and the tip of my ring finger. I fidgeted to set my wedding band right on my finger as it got a little twisted. I smiled, thinking to myself, fuck yeah, I just did that. Then I caught a glimpse of the time on my watch, and I was not smiling anymore. I looked at Arlo, who didn't get my expression changed, and I looked at Arlo, who didn't get why my expression changed, at least not by the confused look on his face. Fuck, the rally, it's in a couple hours. Chuck's gonna be pissed. Let's get this guy back to the lockup. I'll take care of the interrogation. You have some prettying up to do. Arlo cracked himself up with that one. I glared. Fuck you, Arlo. Though I do hope by some miracle I can get myself together, grab my daughter from daycare, get her together, and then be the perfect little politician's wife. All I could do was shake my head and stare off into the space. As I thought crossed my mind that there were worse things than pink skirts and high heels. There are not many, but I'm sure I could come up with a few. Okay, maybe just a couple. At least one? In a whirlwind, Herculean effort, I managed to somehow pull up in the front of the Longshoremen's Local 13 hall with just a few minutes to spare. Perhaps a bigger accomplishment and miracle is that I got Emily in her dress and shoes and managed to give her simple pigtails that probably looked more like clumps of hay, bushels, than her hair. As she gripped my hand, I was doing more of a gliding her and lifting her straight off the ground as I navigated down this long shag carpet within my heels. In another miracle, I never stumbled as the comfort clumped and frayed worse than the pigtails atop M's hair. Once we reached the carpet's end, I met our next challenge. Linoleum flooring that, of course, had to have been just waxed. Running in this hallway, which is about 60 feet, I now knew what it was like for someone to navigate a frozen ice pond in shoes that weren't meant for surface they'd be touching. I probably would have been better off just trying to slide across the surface and let the momentum just force us down the hall. If not, for Emily, there would be no doubt I would have ended up head-first slide or completely tumble into a serious concussion or something broken. However, when Emily whimpered, I knew I wasn't going anywhere, at least not at the race car pace we were setting. "Mommy, you're hurting my arm." I stopped and turned to her as in the calmest voice I could possibly muster, with empathy as my vocal cords would allow, and explained myself. "I'm sorry, Em. This is Mommy's fault. I made us later than I would have liked. But if we can just get to that man standing over there and down this hall with a jacket, tie, and clipboard, then we're where we need to be, and you can relax, okay? She shook her head in agreement, even though she was pouting a little while doing so. We approached the man within a couple feet and halted as he held his hand out to keep us from running right past him. Honestly, I wondered about this unit's security detail choices right from the get-go. This guy, who was really a kid, probably nearing 25, looked like the young Republican poster boy. Blonde hair, wavy, perfect parted, and blue oceanic eyes, and perfectly sparkling white teeth. His suit perfectly pressed, his tie perfectly knotted in a double Windsor, and I could check my makeup in his shoes, they were so polished. The only odd thing is he didn't smile. "Hello, ma'am. Names, please?" "Janelle and Emily Street." Time was ticking away in my head, and like a troubling psychotic version of 60 Minutes, the stopwatch that opened that show and took us to each commercial break. The ticking. The kid was anything but quick. "Ma'am, I'm telling you I'm on the list. You want to know how I know that?" I could throw this guy over my shoulder with a wrist lock and his own momentum. Then before he knew it, my size 6 pumps would dig into his side of his cheek as I wrenched back into an extended armbar and pulled his shoulder right out of his joint socket. I closed my eyes for a mere second to relish in that thought. "No, I don't, but I'm sure you will tell me." Did I not take this kid for a smartass? What he didn't know was he had now opened Pandora's box. Because I wrote the list. I worked for the FBI, and I profiled and backgrounded every person on that list. Number 14, that's Shun Arias. She was arrested in 1971 for being part of an anti-Vietnam sit at USC. Number 11 is Cole Marcus. His record is clean, but he's married to number 42 on the list, who's anything but clean. Just clean enough. "Yeah, that's right. Go ahead, check it. Go ahead." He hesitated for a brief moment. He started to think I could hear the hamster in his brain waking up from its normal nap slumber, getting up and starting to churn out its wheel rotations. Fuck, my skirt was tight. I was starting to lose circulation in my thighs, standing there and waiting for Chip to figure it out. I didn't expect what came next. Him to fold so quickly and throw a temper tantrum. "You really think you're smart, don't you? You looked down at the paper for a brief moment I was holding up, memorized a couple names off the first page. Well, Miss Party Crashing News Reporter, I now know you wouldn't know who's on this list saying number 11 is married. And you want to know why? Because number 42 is Leaf Bowler. He's a guy." I turned to my daughter, who was amusing herself making shadow puppets from the sunlight creeping into the auditorium on the wall. "Emily, come on, sweetheart. We're going now. Oh, and the word you're looking for is memorized, not mesmerized." As we walked off and almost into the hallway, I heard my newfound enlightened friend discussing loudly the merits of my statement. "Guys can't be married to each other." I didn't look back as I held my daughter's hand and kept walking. Okay, so I couldn't resist. I turned ever so slightly with a smug smile on my face and said, "They can in Norway." I'm sure I fucked this guy's life and brain all up from that moment forward, but I had no time to enjoy it. As we turned the corner and headed just a mere feet down the hallway, the crowd that had gathered at the doorway came into view. Before I picked up Emily, pushed her through the crowd, and pressed her up against my chest to shield her from whatever horror we were about to witness, I ran into Jane Armstrong. She was this pretty young thing, 22, maybe no more than 23, sporting the California golden tan, the straight long blonde hair, and perfectly French manicured nails, dressed in a tightly pastel blue dress that hugged and exposed her in all the right places, and though tasteful, far from conservative or Stepford Whitefish type of dress. The funny thing was that she had a bachelor's degree in political science and still played the part that they wanted her to play. She was merely a secretary for all intents and purposes, liaisoning and escorting dignitaries around while simultaneously flirting with the men and relating to the women. Her job was to know people's titles and names for the introductions. That was the power of these folks. I could tell this young woman had something I would be envious of, and yet we were both looking like they wanted us to look, and her taking it a step further. "Oh my God, Janie. So glad you're here. Wow, you two look amazing. I love pink on you." She leaned down. "Hi, Em. Lollipop?" Jan produced a green lollipop in her mind, Jan produced a green lollipop as if her mind had just made it appear out of thin air. Emily was so excited. She looked up at me for approval, and I barely acknowledged it was okay, but I did give her a nod, like she wasn't going to take it anyway. I obviously was more interested in weaving through the crowd and seeing what was behind the door. I looked down at Emily, who was licking away at the lollipop, and turned to Jan. "So what's going on in there?" "You think they tell me anything? Sometimes playing the giggling airhead doesn't always work." Honestly, I was about to kick down the door and push my way through a crowded hallway when I ran into you girls. "Now I'm certain you can get further than I can. So why don't you go find out? I'll keep an eye on Emily." "Thanks, Jan. And I know I've told you that before, but you don't have to be the giggling airhead. You have valuable skills beyond what sits in your chest." "I know I've told you this before, but judging by the way you look right now, you're starting to realize that what I've always known, you catch more bees with honey than you do vinegar." I shook my head, but then I realized as I'm teetering on my 6-inch heels, adjusting a tight skirt that kept bunching up at my thighs, and while looking down at my perfectly painted and matching nails, that I may not be a giggling airhead, but I was certainly starting to dress the part. And we'll stop there. Like I said, this is We the Moral Majority, and you can get that pretty much everywhere. It's in paperback and ebook, Amazon, or you can go to threefuriouspress.com. threefuriouspress.com. That's my publisher, and check it out there. And check out all the great books that they have there. They've got an amazing, amazing catalog, and I'm just proud and honored to be a part of it, as I am to have appeared on this show. Thank you, Josh, for having me, and thank you for all of you for listening. I really appreciate it, and like I said, I hope you go check out We the Moral Majority and Amongst the Killing. And also, while I'm at it, I'll go ahead and plug that I run an online network called GoIndieNow. We help support and do shows that highlight and promote indie artists of all art forms. So if you're an indie artist out there and you're listening to this, please look us up, GoIndieNow. We're primarily shows on YouTube, so if you just type GoIndieNow in the search bar, all one word or all 3 separate words, you'll be able to find us no matter what. We're usually the first thing that pops up there on the search. And also facebook.com/GoIndieNow. I do have a Facebook page, and that's Facebook/NeverMindTheFine Print, and that's where you can find my personal Facebook page, and my Twitter handle is @JoeDream73. Thanks again for having me, Josh, and everybody, remember that it's always time to go indie now. Thanks.
Let me help you tell your story. I offer a variety of audio services. I will narrate, I will produce, I will edit, and I will master your file so that it will be ready for Audible and Spotify. And if you don't want me to narrate your story, whether you want to do it or get someone else, I will help you find the right person for the job. All in all, I just want to help you tell your story. Let me help you. For information on my rates and services, please click the link below in the podcast description, jpantelresco.wordpress.com, for more details. And that's it for this week. As far as stories go, Joe is an incredible talent. Check out We the Moral Majority. There, I said it right. It's available now where books are sold. Courtesy of Three Furious Press. His channel, Go Indie Now, is one of the best songs on YouTube. You should definitely give it a subscribe and follow if you haven't already. Joe, I thank you very much for doing this. Like I told you, you're an amazing man, and don't ever sell yourself short. Speaking of, Wow. Let's talk about me going forward here. So, Alice Zero cracked 2508 on Amazon Canada's list. I couldn't believe it. I actually have a picture of it. I'm really hoping you guys continue that trend. That would be the world to me to see that thing keep climbing. I'm glad people seem to be into it. I was number 10 in mashup fictions. I was in the top 25 in mythology. I never thought I'd hit that. That's cool. But beyond all that, so thank you guys. If you guys want to support myself, the link will be below. But it's been crazy. It's been a crazy few days. I've had a bit of understanding of what I need to do to get better. I have clients right now, and I got things to work on. So I've been changing my habits. It's been a struggle. There's a discipline you have to learn to do this. Like I've said this on other interviews and other places. There's a discipline and mindset you have to do to freelance, and it's hard to do. I have it easier right now than a lot of people would in my position, and I know that, but it's still, even with me, it's hard. And some days I have to let myself understand that it's okay, it's hard. Don't quit because it's hard. Quit because it sucks. It hasn't sucked yet. That all said, there are days. But my book's doing well. My audiobook business, like I said, I'm working on that right now too. If you guys are interested, I'm going to warn you guys right now, in October the price is going to go up even more, because I know just what this actually works and what this entails. And I'm working on my own audiobook for this. I'm not going to probably release it until I really re-release the book as part of the wide launch. But these story times have taught me an awful lot about how to put a book together, and I want to thank everybody for listening, and I want to thank everybody for reading, because it's been an incredible list. And that will do it for this episode of Just Joshing. If you want to support the podcast, you can do so a number of different ways. You can subscribe to the podcast. I'm on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, Deezer. You name it, I'm on it. Find me, subscribe to me, let people know I'm out there. Support my books. The Watcher, Storm Dancer, Wandering God, Mirror Publishing, Alice Zero, and The Cloud Diver are India, available on Amazon right now. Cloud Diver will be launching wide October 4th. Letting you guys know that right now. So you're going to be seeing advertisements throughout. Book Brush is going to be happening this month as well. My YouTube channel is Josh Pantellaresco. My Twitter, Instagram is @jpantellaresco. Stay inspired, everybody. Keep doing your thing. Keep going. And I'll talk to you guys next time.
Josh.